Okay, now lug that thing around with your 125-pound vest on and all the other armor and your spear and throw a 15-pound weight at the end of the spear. This is just his fighting gear. He's used to being agile, moving around with all of this weight on him. We've got a massive person here. And his shield bearer went before him. In verse 8, he stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." Again, still not a great scenario. I mean, Israel doesn't have anybody who can physically match Goliath. But at least it's one-on-one. It's not 6,000 versus 2,000. It's their best shot. All they need is one guy. One guy who's lifted a weight at some point in his life. To stand up and say, "I'll give it a go. I'll try it. I'll put myself on the line. I'll risk my life. If at any shot, maybe if I can just keep dodging him and weaving him and running around, he'll get tired, then I can attack him." Just something, some strategy to bring this guy down. In verse 10, and the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day." He's now turned it. He taunts them. He blasphemes them. He's now making it a personal attack against them and against their God. He says, "Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were encouraged and ran into battle. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. The word dismayed there means shattered and broken. Any confidence they had, gone. I mean, you can almost imagine this Philistine coming out of the camp, Goliath walking out of the camp, and as if the close, at first it's like, well, he's not that bad. But the closer he gets to you, the more you notice his proportions. And the larger you realize he is. And now he's beginning to taunt. He's beginning to defy. He's beginning to blaspheme. He's calling out a man from Israel. And in response, they're broken. They realize we have nothing to throw at this guy. Absolutely nothing. None of us can match this guy. None of us has a chance against this guy. He can sneeze and kill any one of us. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. The phrase they're greatly afraid is they were exceedingly full of dread. Exceedingly full of dread. What do? Every time they fought the Philistines, when it was just them and not someone like Jonathan, when it was just Saul and his army, they got stamped. Bad. But now, the reality of it is looking at their champion, saying, we have nothing. As an army, we cannot match their army. We don't even have a man to match their man. We have no champion to match their champion. We have no hope, no solutions. We're done for. Verse 12. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah named Jesse, who had 8 sons. In the days of Saul, the man was already old and advanced in years. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to the battle. So David's older brothers are there with Saul. They are there among Saul and the rest of the army who are broken and exceedingly full of dread. The names of the 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, and next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammai. David was the youngest. The 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days the Philistine came forward and took his stand morning and evening. So it's bad enough for Goliath to come out and call them out. Say, I dare you, just send one guy to try to fight me. And that one moment for the Israelites to realize, we got nothing. And so seeing no response, Goliath is like, yeah, I thought so. Walks back to his camp. Later that night, find anybody yet? Anybody? No? All right. Next morning. Anything? No, I didn't think so. Every morning, every night, 40 days. Adding insult to injury. Further, just grinding the Israelites to powder, realizing they've got nothing. absolutely nothing. They've assembled their troops. They've assembled their fighting men. They've assembled their warriors, and still they have nothing to throw against Goliath. I'm not even sure what Israel's doing standing around there. I mean, you figure at some point, it's like, let's just make a run for it. You know, he's a big dude, but we could probably outrun him. Maybe. He's got the massive vest on. You know, maybe that'll slow him down. Maybe we just outrun him. But they just stand there, paralyzed in fear. They can't advance. They can't beat him. They can't beat the army. They're even too afraid to try to run. Now, how fast, how big are his strides? How quick can he catch up to them? They just don't know. They don't know what to do. They just stand paralyzed. Day after day, week after week, for over a month, they stay in the same spot, doing absolutely nothing but living in fear. So here we've got David, who's just kind of running some errands back and forth. In verse 17, and Jesse said to David his son, take for your brothers that ephah of the parched grain and these 10 loaves, and carry them quickly to the camp to your brothers. Also take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000. See if your brothers are well, and bring some token from them. To put it bluntly, David's the water boy. You know, when I played football for 2 years, I was in the huddles. I heard the comments the other guys were making. The water boy wasn't exactly the cherished member of the team. He was the little servant who just ran the errands, bring me the water when I want it. Not respected, not valued. Because all the guys in the huddle know that the water boy is the water boy because he didn't have what it took to be on the team. So he was just there to serve them, bring them water. That's all David is. He's the little water boy. You know, run and get something for the grown-ups. You know, we men, we're trying to figure out this problem, so you get us something to drink. Bring us some cheese. You know, keep us fed. Run our errands for us. That's all he is. Just running back and forth, bringing word back and forth, bringing food back and forth, bringing supplies back and forth. In verse 19, now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took the provisions and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the encampment as the host was going out to the battle line, shouting the war cry. And Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage and ran to the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. As he talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. David heard him. The water boy heard. Ooh, he's in trouble now. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were much afraid. So it almost seems like at some point, Israel decided collectively, well, let's just kind of advance a little bit, and maybe if we just defy his rules, we'll all just come and take him out or something. But Goliath steps out, issues his challenge again, and what do we see happening with Saul and the others? It says they fled. Literally, they disappeared. They just vanished. They're gone. They run back to the camp. They hide behind a rock somewhere. They just get out of sight. They disappear. They vanish. Because it says in verse 24, they were much afraid. Again, they were exceedingly full of dread. It's kind of one thing to muster up your courage. Say, you know what? I'm tired of this. It's been 40 days now. Let's get this Goliath. We can do this. Come on, let's go. And then you go and you see him towering over you. Whose idea was this? I'm gone. I don't know what you guys are thinking. It says there, David heard. The water boy overheard this. Now, David's got the out. He's got the excuse. He's not supposed to be fighting. He's not, if you will, enlisted in the army. David could be like, yeah, have fun, guys. I got to get more cheese for you. Sorry, I wish I could help, but I got stuff to do. I've got an assignment here. I'm trying to do my job to help you guys out, but this is your guys' fight. He's got the out. Verse 25. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way. So shall it be done to the man who kills him. So they now begin to offer an incentive program. We'll give you a bonus if you're willing to go out and fight him. And if you win, here's the cash prizes you could win. You'll get a wife out of it. And we'll just let you live free, and we'll kind of just make everything good for you if you can just step forth and take down this giant finally. But notice David's motivation. He's almost like, what are you offering? But notice, this guy's defying you. David isn't just looking at this like, oh wow, this is a nice opportunity for financial gain. Who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel. This is a reproach to Israel. What Goliath has been doing for 40 days has been a slap in the face of Israel. And has been a slap in the face of the God of Israel. And David isn't willing just to sit back and say, oh well, I'm just going to go take care of my sheep and stay far away from this mess. Something in him begins to stir now. Something in him wells up. Something in him is this righteous anger that is flaring up against the arrogance of this Philistine that would defy the armies of God, but in verse 26, defy the armies of the living God. David's beginning to understand that this isn't just about him challenging us and calling us out because we don't have a giant champion like they do. This is about the living God here, people. We can't just sit back and live in fear. We can't just sit back and be paralyzed. We can't just sit back and ignore him and let him day after day after day come out and keep doing this. Verse 28. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why have you come down? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? David, you're being irresponsible. Why'd you come here? You've got responsibilities. You're ignoring your responsibilities to be here. It's interesting that his brother is mad at him. He's mad at David for being there. He's mad at David for talking to the other warriors. He's mad at David because he sees in David that David's starting to think about getting involved in this. Something in his brother is offended. I don't think this has anything to do with David. I think this is something in the heart of his brother saying, here's my little kid brother. I've been here for 40 days, scared to death of this monster who's intimidating us. Who does my little brother think he is? Just to waltz in here and think he's going to be the hero of the day? No, we're the ones. We're the men. We're the fighting men, not this kid. You go back and tend to your sheep. Let the adults handle this. And he says, I know your presumption. Literally, I know your arrogance and the evil of your heart. For you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Was it not but a word? He turned away from him toward another and spoke in the same way, and the people answered him again as before. His brother's now attacking him. See, you're just arrogant. You just want to be the center of attention. So far, David has done nothing to suggest that he is seeking to be the center of attention. What is motivating David right now is, here's this blasphemer who's defying the living God. And I'm not going to stand back and let it happen. Something has to be done. And of course, all the big boys, all the men who are supposed to be handling this are not handling it. Yeah, they're offended. Because they have been failing their job. They're worried about who's tending the sheep when they're failing to defend the honor of the living God. And they're offended at the very thought of some kid waltzing in there thinking maybe he's got the answer, maybe he's got the solution, when for 40 days they should have been the ones who came forth to fight this champion. Verse 31. When the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Stop being afraid. Stop panicking. Put me in. Let me go. I'll fight him. I don't care. And, I mean, if we kind of look at the story and we frown upon what Saul's about to do, but in all honesty, would we act much different? Like, that's nice, son. Now go back to your sheep. You're not qualified. You're not trained. I mean, so far, who's David? He's the water boy who goes back to spend his time hanging out with the sheep and playing his harp. And now he's saying, I will be your champion. I will represent you. I will take down this monster. Okay, that's nice. Yeah, we've got a real problem here, and we need real solutions here, and that's very nice. That's well and good, but run along. Go back to the sheep now. Verse 33. Saul said to David, "You're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him. You're but a youth. He's been a man of war from his youth. You're a youth. This guy that you think you're going to go up and fight, he has been trained to fight since he was younger than you. What makes you think you're going to go and take him on? You're the water boy. You're the harpist. No offense against harps, but you don't typically picture a harpist as the most robust physical specimen. It's a bit of a dainty instrument, to be honest. Here's the water boy shepherd harp player. And he's saying, I will go take on this monster and represent you. And what is Saul's response? You are not able. You don't have the power. Literally. You don't have the strength that it's going to take. You don't have the power that it's going to take to go up against this Philistine. He is too much for you. He's too well trained. He's too well equipped. You don't stand a chance. Verse 34. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. But when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, and this is important, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul said to David, go, the Lord be with you. Here's David saying, yeah, I know I'm not the biggest guy. I know I'm not the most muscular guy. I know I don't look like your champion. But those sheep that I watch, there's other animals that attack those sheep. There have been bears. There have been lions. And not only do I go after them, not only do I take my sheep back when those animals take them away from me, I grab them by the beard and take them down. God has delivered them into my hands over and over. It's not David saying, yeah, I don't look big, but feel these muscles. I can take on a bear and a lion. It's like the Lord's done this. The Lord has brought this victory through me. The Lord has enabled me to take down bears, to take down lions. And compared to bears and lions, who's this uncircumcised Philistine? Who's this guy? He's nothing. He's nothing because David isn't looking at him like the rest of the warriors, and Saul is looking at Goliath. Because again, Saul's pattern over and over and over, he's always concerned about how many troops does he have versus how many troops does the other army have. He's always concerned about what kind of weapons do we have versus the weapons that they have. What made the difference with Jonathan? When Jonathan took on the Philistines with his heinous armor bearer, this was, let's see what God might do through us. And now here's David saying, look, I don't care if I'm the biggest. I don't care if I'm the strongest. I don't care if I have the weapons. I don't care if I have the armor. I don't care if I have what it takes. I have God, and that's all I need. God has defeated lions and bears on my behalf, and He's going to bring down this blasphemer without any problem. Just let me go. That's all I'm asking. Give me a chance. I mean, what does Saul have to lose? So David gets killed, so they lose their water boy. Find somebody else. Saul has no risk other than his own pride than to let this kid, who just walked onto the scene and within minutes is like, oh, go, I'll take him. Let's do it. Here's Saul the king with his best fighting men for 40 days, and none of them step forward to say, I'll do it. And here comes this kid, this little harp-playing water boy shepherd. He says, I'll do it. God will take him down. It's not about me. God could have done this with any one of you. But none of you were stepped forward and let God use you. I'll do it. I've seen God do it before. I know He'll do it again. So let me go. And Saul says, fine, go. But notice what they do in verse 38. Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. So Saul's like, okay, fine, you can go, but you need to be more like me. You need to fit into my armor. You need to take on my stuff, take on my equipment. Again, his focus, even though David just said, this is going to be God's fight, not mine, Saul reverts right back to, well, take my armor, take my stuff. You still got to have the equipment necessary to look like a real soldier, to be a real warrior here. So he tries that, verse 39, and David strapped his sword over his armor, and he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them. In other words, he's got to be comfortable, he's got to be agile, he's got to know what he's doing with this armor. He can't be tripping and falling over himself. And he says, this isn't going to cut it. I don't need it anyway. So David put them off. In verse 40, then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. Doesn't want the armor. Doesn't need the armor. Doesn't take Saul's sword. Again, we already saw swords aren't in abundance here. Doesn't take Saul's sword. He takes a staff. He takes a shepherd's bag. Goes and finds 5 stones. And throws them in his pouch. And says, I'm ready. Now, again, you almost wish you kind of had a little camera or tape rolling in Saul's mind to be like, seriously? Dude, he's huge. You going to hit him with your toothpick and throw some pebbles at him? What exactly is your game plan here? I'm not even sure to what extent David is full. Only he's got a sling and some stones. We know what his game plan is. But honestly, what's David thinking? I don't need more than this. Why? Because this is God's fight, not mine. God's going to bring the victory. It doesn't matter what weapons I bring to it. This is God's battle, not mine. Now, why 5 stones? Is David trembling in his faith? Is David second-guessing, saying, I don't think 1 stone's going to cut it. I'm going to have to kind of a little machine gun here and just fire stone after stone at this guy's head, and hopefully one of them will do the trick. There's all kinds of theories what David is doing. Now, there's some debate based on how we translate the words, but in 2 Samuel 21, it tells us that Goliath has 4 sons. Now, some say the translation means 4 brothers, but some could say, well, he's planning for Goliath and his 4 sons / or brothers, whatever it might be. Still, even if David is preparing for the sons / brothers of Goliath to come after him for revenge, is that a lack of faith on David's part? No. Because think about it. For all David knows, the agreement that Goliath set up was, if you take me down, we will serve you. Now, that's well and fine from Goliath, but if you're a Philistine and your champion falls down, are you going to say, we were beat. Okay, I'll be your slave. Go ahead, take me. For all David knows, when he takes down Goliath, and he has no doubt Goliath is going down, the only question in David's mind is, how many others am I going to have to take down while I'm there? It may not just be Goliath's 4 sons / brothers. This could be the entire Philistine army coming at him. And David heads into that scenario with this little pouch saying, I got 5 rocks, that's enough. If I've got to take on the whole army, I just need 5, that's fine. I'm good. This isn't a lack of faith. This is still a tremendous confidence in God, because he's basically not just going against Goliath and his sons / brothers, he's potentially going to stand against the entire army of the Philistines with a stick, a sling, and 5 stones. With every ounce of confidence in his God that this is more than enough that my God is going to need to bring the victory. In verse 41, the Philistine moved forward and came near to David with the shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him. Literally, he saw him as just worthless. He was a toy. For he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. So here's Goliath. You've got this massive giant warrior, and he sees this little pretty boy coming out to him. Like, oh, this ought to be good. It's kind of like throwing a little chew toy to a Rottweiler. And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? He's insulted. It's like he's insulted that this is all David's coming to fight against him. Like, at least give me some challenge here. At least make this entertaining. At least put up some kind of fight. The Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, come to me, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. Now, you're kind of like, yeah, that's what a speech. I mean, that's a Braveheart kind of speech. I can almost imagine, as soon as the last word is out of his mouth, the response from Goliath and the Philistines is raucous laughter. Like, seriously? You're going to trash talk Goliath? You're like this big. He's like this big. Your arms are like this big. His arms are this big. You've got some stones and a sling and a stick. He's got armor and a sword and all this stuff and a sword bearer in front of him. Really? You're going to trash talk? I mean, this had to be wonderful amusement. Now, I have to commend David here at this point because he takes the time to get in the face of Goliath or get in the kneecap of Goliath and trash talk him. If I'm David, I think I'm going to kind of hide behind a big rock and shoot that first stone and then just run for it. But he actually goes up to him. In no hurry. He knows what's going to happen. He just wants to let Goliath know what's about to happen. It's like, you are going to die. I'm going to cut off your head. Really? Little heart boy, really? That's your plan? He looks at the weapons that David has. It's almost like, how do you even plan on doing that? With a little stone, little slingshot. Ooh, I'm scared. This has to be incredible amusement for Goliath. To see David come forth. On what basis is David coming with such confidence before Goliath? Simply the confidence of God. Knowing that God has told the people of Israel that they were to wipe out their enemies. And over, Saul has failed to conquer the Philistines. And so David knows that God wants this victory to happen. He's like, all God needs is somebody who will step forward and do this. And again, he's made it very clear, the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly, not away. He ran quickly. He hurried toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. So Goliath is sitting back having a good laugh, but then decides, you know what, I'm annoyed. I'm going to end this now. Get rid of this little runt. So Goliath starts moving forward. David runs to meet him. It's on. Let's go. Let's do this. David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank, or it hit into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. Knocks him out. One blow. One little smooth stone brings down this massive giant. Now, I don't know how big the stone was. I know that David's not this massive specimen to be having these huge boulders with a slingshot. But I love how Scripture says it was 5 smooth stones. Smooth stones. If I'm David, and I know that my only weapon against this giant is a stone, I'm going to look for the most jagged, most pointed edge stone I can find and hurl that thing, and maybe the point of it can get the job done. He takes smooth stones. Nothing sharp, nothing blunt about them, nothing piercing about them. Just some smooth stones, some ordinary everyday stones. Pulls one out, takes aim, fires. Nails him right in the forehead. He falls. That's it. I almost wonder what has to be going through the head of Saul and the Israelites as they're watching this unfold. You can almost see as David is running to meet Goliath in battle. You can almost imagine what are David's brothers doing? Like, oh man, this is going to be ugly. I can't watch. Or Saul saying, why did I let this kid do this? Oh, this is going to be horrid. Everybody turn away. It's going to get graphic. And next thing you know, they hear a thud. And they turn. They don't see David on the ground. They see Goliath on the ground. It's almost as if it's one of those moments where Saul is going to ask somebody, could you pinch me? Did that really just happen? This giant that we've been scared of for 40 days, he just went down because of one smooth stone to the forehead? At the hand of our shepherd, water boy, harpist? Did that really just happen? That's all it took? That's all God needed to bring the victory? The simple answer is, yep. That's all he needed. Just one little stone slung from one little guy to the forehead of this giant, and the giant collapses. Now, notice here, it doesn't specifically tell us in verse 49 that this killed Goliath. It knocks him out, but doesn't tell us that it kills him. And that's going to be important in a second, because people say there's a contradiction here. But verse 50. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine, and took his sword and drew it out of its sheath, and killed him, and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. So, did he die from the rock to the head? Did he die because he got his head cut off? You can make it work either way with the story. But now, shift gears to the Philistines. Their champion just fell. Now, at this point you'd say, well, why don't they all just rush on David and take him out? Would you? Would you mess with him? If you just saw your 10-foot giant go down that quickly to this little dude, I don't care how little he is, I'm staying away from him. Because whatever he did to Goliath, he can certainly do to me. So the Philistines they don't seek revenge. They don't go after him. They know that they are in for something bigger than they can imagine. They run. They get out of there. In verse 52, and the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron, so that the wounded Philistines fell on the way from Shaaraim as far as Gath and Ekron. And the people of Israel came back from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their camp. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. As soon as Saul saw David go out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as your soul lives, O king, I do not know. And the king said, inquire whose son the boy is. And as soon as David returned from striking down the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, whose son are you, young man? And David answered, I am the son of your servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. Now, David has been around Saul before. He's played the harp to help comfort Saul. Saul has no clue who he is. He doesn't remember him. He's a nobody. He's just a water boy. He's a harpist. He's a shepherd. Oh, and by the way, he's a giant killer. How did that happen? Because God was being blasphemed. The honor of God was being tarnished. And the people of God were standing back, paralyzed in fear, not knowing what to do, just sitting back and letting it happen day after day. And this one little guy says, I'm not going to stand back and let it happen. Let me fight this. Let me go up against this giant. I don't need all the weapons. I don't need the armor. I don't need all the stuff that you think makes a warrior, that you think is going to bring battle. Just give me a stone and my sling. And he'll go down. Not because I'm the one doing it. Not because I'm this wonderful slingshotter. Because this battle's the Lord's. It's not mine. It's not yours. It's God's. All he needs is somebody to step forward and say, I'll throw the stone. I'll cast it. We'll bring him down. God could have used any one of that army to do the same thing. Just like the battle that Jonathan fought by himself. God just needs somebody to step forward and say, I'll fight it. It's not about me. It's God's battle. He just needs somebody to fight it. And here in this situation, God's saying, I just need someone to take the stone and sling it at the guy's head. That's all I'm looking for. This. Not a sword, not a spear, not a shield, not a coat of mail, not armor on your legs, not a helmet of bronze. This. Imagine a strategy meeting with Saul and the army of Israel. Say, look, we're going to take out the Philistines once and for all. Oh, king, what's your plan? What's your secret weapon? This. We're going to bring them down with this. Okay. Saul has been going a little loopy lately. It's this. This is all God needed. He just needed one man to be faithful. To say, this isn't about me. It's not about my honor. It's not about my reputation. It's not about making a name for myself. It's not about the weapons and the stuff and the tricks. It's just about being faithful to God to sling the stone for the honor of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, to fight the battle that He once fought, and He will bring the victory. So what does this have to do with us? Are there giants in your life? For us as a church, are there giants that face us? They're the things that we look at them and say, this is an impossible situation. There's no way that this can be changed. There's no way that this will ever turn around. There's no way that anything can ever happen with this. I'm sure if we were to come up just one at a time, we could probably tell story after story after story of a giant that's looming over you right now in your life. In your marriage, your family, in your work, whatever the situation is. We could all say, yeah, here's my giant. He's got a 125-pound vest on. He's got bronze armor on his legs. He's got this 15-pound spearhead on his back. And I don't know what to do. So we do what Saul did. Spend 40 days paralyzed from fear, not knowing what to do, not moving one way or the other, just sitting back perplexed. And the giant perpetually comes out and slaps the honor of God in the face. And you sit back not knowing what to do. As a church, there's a giant looming over us. You know, our circumstances can never change as a church, and we are where we are, and we're never going to see the Spirit of God work among us. It's just this giant looming over us. Is there any of us who will pick up a stone and sling it? Now, just for the point of application, what is the stone? I want to suggest to you that this is prayer. The stone of prayer. Is it really? Prayer? That's your answer. That's your solution. Prayer, really? And that's the same thing that Saul was thinking about David. A stone? That's your plan. You're just going to throw a stone with your slingshot. That's going to bring down the champion Goliath. Yep, that's the plan. Over and over. I believe we see in the book of Acts. So we look at church history. There have been warriors of God who have done nothing more than sling a stone of prayer. And things have changed. Circumstances have changed. Lives have changed. Because the power is not in prayer. The power wasn't in David. The power wasn't even in the stone. The power is not in prayer. As Alistair Begg said, that the power technically isn't in prayer. But prayer is the means by which we access the power of God. That's all that God needed. Was some vehicle by which He could work this victory. I believe, I've been here 12 years now, I believe more than ever before that this is our season as a church, as individuals, to pick up the stone. We've picked up the stone before. Pick it up again. Pick it up again. Think about the disciples out there fishing, catching nothing. And Jesus just says, put your net on the other side of the boat. What difference is that going to make? It made all the difference in the world. They tried casting their net and nothing happened. They just put it on the other side of the boat. Everything changed. This week we're going to relaunch our midweek prayer ministry. See, we've done that before. We're going to do it again. But this time I don't want our prayer meeting to be an item on the calendar. It's been that before. I admit that, and I take responsibility for that. We've made it an item on the calendar. Just another thing going on. This time I want our prayer meeting to be, if not as important, then more important than even what we do on a Sunday morning. I don't know about you, but I think about everything that we've done as a church, all the things that we've tried, all the things we've done, all the ways we've tried to reach out, all the ways we've tried to preach the gospel, all the ways we've tried to reach out to neighborhoods, all the different ways and things we've tried to implement in classes and all this stuff. Still haven't seen the giant fall down. Still haven't seen him go down. We haven't thrown this. in sincerity and truth. Not just as a good luck toss, not just as a formality toss. So, yeah, we're Christians, we're about to go do something, so let's toss a stone over our shoulders for good luck. We're picking this up as our weapon. And this is what's going to be the key to the victory. This is what's going to bring the giant down. Does it mean we don't do the other stuff? No, we do the other stuff. If you remember, after the giant falls down, David runs, gets the sword, takes the head off the giant. And then the army chases after the Philistines with their weapons, with their stuff. That stuff's fine. It's not wrong. But until the stone was cast, none of that stuff made any difference. For 40 days, all their weapons did nothing but sit there and do absolutely nothing about the giant. You know, they could sit there and say, wow, look at this spear we've got. This is a nice spear. This is a state-of-the-art spear here. Yeah, it was doing nothing. It was the stone that made the difference. For us as a church, to begin picking up the stone and casting at the giant. Now, what is that? Does that mean that every time we pray that whatever giant we face is going to go down? I'm not promising that. I'm just saying we need to start throwing the stones. David didn't know who he'd have to take out with the stones, who would go down, how many he'd have to go after. But he knew he had to go and cast a stone. The simple weapon. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy. I want to invite us as a church, corporately. You look at the book of Acts. It's a book of evangelism, but it's also a book of a corporate prayer meeting, woven throughout the entire book. For us to be people privately of prayer, but also corporately of prayer. To come before the throne of God. Truly focus upon those giants. We can do all the other stuff and pat ourselves in the back, but the giant is still standing there. The giants in our lives are still standing there. The giants facing our church is still standing there. We've polished the weapons. We've gathered the weapons. We've organized the weapons. The giant's still there. Let's start casting the stone. Simple act of faith and obedience, trusting God to bring the victory. Whatever that victory means for God, I don't know. Let's move forward. Seek His face and cry out to Him. He's not looking for the best, the strongest. That's not who David was. What was the defining quality of David? We've already been introduced to it. He's a man after God's heart. A man after God's heart. Will you be a man after God's heart? A woman after God's heart? Whatever giant might stand against us, to grab that stone, to grab prayer. There's no power in prayer, but it's in God. Say, Lord, you will bring this victory because your honor is at stake here. Your name is at stake here. Your reputation is at stake. The gospel and your kingdom are at stake here. And Lord, I'm not going to sit by. Watching the news past few weeks here in Cleveland, school shooting in Chardon, shooting at the Cracker Barrel. I think the city is becoming a giant, standing against the armies of the living God? Are we going to stand back and say, wow, things are getting bad, they're going to keep getting worse, let's just hide? Well, the Israelites tried that, nothing happened. We don't have the weapons to fight what's happening here. God's not looking for that. David said, God's not going to bring this because of sword or spear, but God's going to bring it. But it needs somebody who will step out from the ranks, grab a stone, and take aim and fire.